Speaking of therapy, I need some after this. I need some after this, you know, after this stuff. So it's just a lot.
Let's talk about therapy. I know I definitely need to find a good therapist. But I thought it's a good topic for us to talk about because I know that it's hard to find someone to talk to. It's hard to find someone good to talk to. And I think that, even if people are in a situation where you think like, oh, I should talk to someone, there's all those steps, or my child should talk to someone. There's all those steps of finding the right therapist. And then is it worth it? And, making time for it. And so I thought it would be good for us to talk about, because I know this is a really popular topic, especially with our audience. And I just thought that, y'all might have some great insights to share with people. So what has your experience been with therapy? Good, bad, ugly?
So it's a process. That is the number one thing. Um, you know, uh, Both of my girls are in therapy, and I have a confession to make. I need to be in therapy, but I have not found that therapist. I went to an online therapist. I stuck my neck out there for myself, and I told the woman my issues, and she's like, pretty much, you're a whiner, is kind of what she was saying to me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I didn't go back to her, and I'm still kind of looking around. Um, but my girls are lucky. They do have a very good therapist, and it didn't take all that much trial and error to get them where they are. So I am thankful for that. But it can be trial and error, and you do have to be able to um, be patient with the process, and if you find somebody that you don't like, it is definitely okay to move on, because you need someone you connect with. If you don't connect with them, then forget about it.
Yeah, I agree. I know that I have heard from people in the past. They would say, "Oh, you're just shopping around for a therapist to tell you what you want to hear." Whether it's like tell you what you want to hear about your child, about their diagnosis, about I don't know, whatever. And so I think that kind of prevents people from saying this therapist isn't connecting with me, this isn't working out. And I think that it's really important to get across to people that if you're not connecting with them, cut them loose.
Right.
I think they can do a lot of damage. Like
Yes,
someone
detrimental, very detrimental.
completely discounting your feelings and your concerns. Like, so what if you're a whiner? I mean, I'm not saying you are, but so
I
what
am.
if you were?
It's okay.
I mean, if I want to talk to you about this, like, isn't that kind of your job?
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. And our experience is, I do agree with Julia. It is a process, and it takes time. It's not like that therapist when you do find them, one, they're going to solve your problems in a week. Like, okay, you're done. Sometimes
Right.
our children and ourselves as caregivers and parents, you know, we need to walk the walk too. When we're talking it, we've got to walk it too. So like you said, Julia, you haven't found anybody. I'm kind of in the same boat. I used to have a really good therapist and she retired. And I'm like, her name was Linda. And I'm like, Linda. Um, so after her, I just, my children's needs, of course, always come first. So we try to find them what they need. But it is, like you said, a process, and they're not going to fix you, or they shouldn't really fix you. I mean, the journey that you're on is probably going to be long or longer than you might think. Um, so it's can be challenging. Um, and then if you have other people in your family that don't really believe in the therapy, if you've got like a spouse or another caregiver that's just like, really, you're going to therapy, so there's just a lot of dynamics that can happen in a family. So I've had relatively good luck for myself when I did go, but my children are off and on with it. Um, but Levi, my youngest, who is the one that has a physical and mental health challenges, he doesn't really go to one regularly. So I don't think he needs it right now, but
I think that's it though, especially with our kids. They kind of have to be willing to buy in. And I know that we hear over and over again from therapists, like you can't force your child into therapy. And 100%, I agree. I know what I have said in the past is sometimes our kiddos have a lot of misconceptions because they hear about things from other people, which may be completely wrong. Maybe in TVs or movies, they've seen, how they make everything so dramatic or to move plots along, things that aren't necessarily real. And I wouldn't want a child to not go to therapy based on some misconceptions. So what I have said in the past is, I get it if they don't want to work with you, that's fine. We certainly don't want to make this painful for anyone. But do me a favor, at least get my kiddo in the room and have a conversation with them. Talk to them about what therapy is and isn't, how it works, and just get them talking and see if you can help. And if you give it 3 sessions, 5 sessions, and you're just not connecting and they're walking in. I have a friend who's a therapist, and she said that she had a kiddo come into her office and physically pick up the chair and turn it around so their back was to her.
Yikes.
Is teenagers. So she talked. And it took a little bit of time, but eventually they kind of went in and they were willing to talk. I think our kids deserve the understanding and that trust building that what they tell their therapist stays with their therapist, and their therapist isn't going to run right back and tell the parent everything that they said. And it may take some time to dispel those myths of things that they've heard that were wrong and build that trust. So, I would ask therapists to give it a little bit of time. And honestly, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But, try and build that rapport.
Yeah, and we as parents kind of can set that up for the therapist and, start that trust building by saying, listen, I don't want to know what goes on in therapy. I'm not going to ask. And if the therapist tries to tell me, I'm not going to listen. You have the freedom to say whatever you need to say. And, if it were me and I had a therapist trying to tell me what my child was saying, I would change therapists for them. Right now I take my kids on a hectic Thursday morning every other week, and 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. And, I pick them up and I'm like, how did it go? Great. Perfect. Let's go. And my kids' therapist gives them little activities to do. And, I'll tell them, make sure you're doing your stuff for Sam. And that's it. That's the extent of my interaction, unless they want to say anything else. So set it up for them.
I had a really great therapist for my youngest for a while. And we would kind of meet in the hallway. And every so often, sometimes it was like, bye, Mom, have a good week, or bye, kiddo, have a good week. Sometimes it would be, today we talked about X, Y, or Z, not their feelings or their thoughts, but like I was teaching them this technique, and they have this activity that they're going to do at home this week. And the only reason maybe they would share it with me was so that I could reinforce it. And sometimes they would kind of pull me aside and check in. How are things going at home? Is everything okay? Is there anything in particular that, that I should know, so maybe we could work on? And maybe that would be it. So, and this was when they were quite young, third, fourth grade. So, but there wasn't anything. Sometimes they'd pull us in and we do like a little bit of a family kind of thing. But yeah, there wasn't afterwards like a debrief. There wasn't that phone call.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell parents, like, I totally get that you want to know. I think for parents, especially after perhaps a child has made an attempt on their life, I think parents want to know, is it me? Is it something I did? And so there's that need for understanding and reassurance that it won't happen again. So parents might be really likely to ask some questions. And that's where it's up to the therapist to have those good boundaries. That's what they go to college for. That's what they're taught.
And I think it's important to offer that on occasion, if the child or the teenager, young adult is open to having caregiver, mom or dad, in a session or two. But it has to be, from the child. If they say, hey, yeah, the therapist suggests, maybe would you be open to having your mom or dad come into the next session because of what you're, just it's about communication. It's about just talking and seeing if there are options to help mom and dad too. Because if there is an attempt, that's some scary stuff for a parent. And, again, you want to be assured, you just want to make sure that they're okay. So I would hope that a therapist would, open up to a little bit more family if they need it.
Yeah.
If it was okay with the kiddo.
And like if they're a play therapist or something and they're just totally not into like family therapy, that's also really cool. It's great to say, here's a great family therapist. It's also great to say, hey, mom or dad, have you considered talking to someone yourself? I suggest that to parents all the time. If your kiddo absolutely does not want to go to therapy, that has to be their right. You can go to therapy as a parent to learn techniques to talk to your child,
Right.
to learn techniques. I think that when you're dealing with a child with mental health challenges, things are really hard. You may be losing sleep just like you did when they were a baby because you're laying in bed worried about this, worried about that. So you yourself are probably stressed out and really worried. So it's a good idea for you to have someone to talk to so that they could kind of center you and help you put things into perspective.
Sure. And you need those tools for yourself when you do have a kiddo that is a little less than willing to, accept help. You definitely need, tools to kind of, make it through. And, communication is probably the biggest problem a lot of families have, especially with teens. And, that's one thing that therapists are really good at, obviously, to, get you communicating on some level.
What's that saying? If you don't change, you don't change. And sometimes we have to change. Like if your kiddo isn't willing to, okay, mom and dad pull up those bootstraps and you make that change and you learn. But that was a great perspective that, sometimes we need more tools in our toolbox. And so we just don't have it. Nobody really teaches you how to be a parent. And then when your children has mental health challenges, that's just a whole other beast over here, So, but yeah, sometimes we just have to be that change.
And I think too, like, especially if there's a lot of things, I have a kiddo with ADHD. There's a lot of things I did not know about ADHD. And ADHD looks very different in children than it does in adults. And there's a lot of misinformation out there. And so if your child has a mental health challenge, it's great to go to a therapist and just kind of talk about, like, what does this symptom look like? How, and then like brainstorm with them, how can I, you know, support my child? There was, looking back, there was just so much I didn't know. And I think a lot of people think about ADHD like it just means your kid is wiggly and can't pay attention and, maybe has some behavior challenges. And I don't think that a lot of people realize how challenging it can be across their lifespan in a variety of ways. And being able to talk to someone who would be able to kind of explain to me, what does that look like and how can you help your child, I think would have really been super valuable.
Right. I feel the same way. So many diagnoses are foreign to parents, and you're just kind of thrown into this world of mental health issues, and you definitely need guidance, and especially licensed clinical guidance, that can explain things and help you figure out how to proceed down the road with these kids. We've been, in our family, we have been really lucky. Sam wasn't our kid's first therapist. We've had some private therapists that were really nice, and actually my middle child's private therapist was the one that told me about PH95 Medicaid, and things like wraparound services, and so we learned a lot from her, and so I am forever grateful for her.
And
I'm glad
and
you
I
had
would
that
imagine.
experience.
Oh, go ahead, Pearl.
I just said that I'm glad you had that experience. That's awesome.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. I would imagine that there's a lot that you as a parent can talk to a therapist about, and not even just learning about your child's diagnosis, but just the things that are going on with you. Parents are under an awful lot of pressure. Dads are under pressure to be a different kind of dad than what they grew up with. Moms are under pressure because everything we do, no matter what it is wrong. So I think it's good to kind of have somebody to talk to about that. Your relationship with your other kiddos, your relationship in your marriage, jobs, all kinds of things. I think that are make talking to having someone, and I know a lot of people will say I don't need a therapist. I have a really great friend that I talk to, and that's great too. Having that natural support is really, really important. But sometimes, like, my bestie is not going to be like, girl, you are off your rocker, you're completely wrong, you should probably be doing something different. Like, my bestie's got my back, no matter what I say. I robbed a bank, you probably deserved that money that was in there, whatever. She's
Exactly.
got my back. I know that. A therapist, on the other hand, is going to tell you what you need to know, even if you don't want to hear it. So it might be nice, like talking about tools in your toolbox. It might be nice to have somebody who's your ride or die, and then have somebody who's going to be like, okay, so that's probably not the healthiest of coping mechanisms. Are you open to trying some different ones?
And right now I have a friend, she's like, why don't you do like this life coach stuff? I'm like, okay, but and she's like, I know this lady from Canada. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, you know what? I'm sure, I'm sure he or she is fine, but I kind of just, I've got some good people around me and that can give me some good, oh, this one's good, this one's not. But I don't know about this life coaching stuff. These people they don't, I think, have credentials. I think they're not like therapists. I don't know. So I hear a lot of that buzzword that, oh, just go to a life coach. I'm like, okay, but I
Well,
don't
and they
know.
may have some benefit or some merit, but to help you maybe get more organized, or
Right,
just put things in a
right.
row. But I would not use a life coach as someone to
For mental health. Right, right.
right, mental health, right. And the best friend thing, if you turn that around, like I have a great best friend and I love her, but she sometimes comes to me with some really tough situations and I don't know what to tell her. And, I try my best, but, I'm like, I'm not a therapist. You gotta, maybe you should talk to somebody about what's going on.
Like, I will support you. I will
Mhm.
drive you to therapy. I will give you the money if you need copay money. But
Right,
I don't know. Now, I'll
right.
tell you what, I will pay a life coach if I could just brain dump on them and they're going to like give me a nice laid out plan for fixing anything that I'm worried about. Like we were talking about you buying a house, Pearl. If you could like call them and brain dump and be like this and this,
Mhm.
give me the perfect solution. I would pay for that. But I don't think that exists. But I would love to hear from a life coach about like, what do y'all do? How do you help?
Mhm.
What's your training? How can anybody put up like a little shingle on their door and say life coach? Because I'm not, I tell everyone, I tell my children and everything, like I am your cautionary tale. Do not do, do not do what I do. I am in Highlights magazine when we were kids, there would be like the two brothers and one was the polite good
Oh, yeah.
brother and one was and
Yeah.
I'm like the black bar over the eyes kind of person in the magazines. So I don't know. I don't know. There's a reason why you all deal with, you guys get to work with families, and my job is like keeping the lights on and stuff in the back.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. I don't know, but I'd love to know like what do
Yeah.
life coaches do? How are they trained? What's the deal? Or maybe
Yeah.
there's a difference in Canada. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It was just interesting that she said, "Oh, she does it virtually," and and I'm like, "Oh, okay," but I just wasn't. It's time. It does take time to kind of find these people and vet them and go through the process. It just, and sometimes, and like we say, we're the moms. Sometimes we don't put ourselves first. It's about those kiddos, but yeah, we do have to, like you said earlier, we do have to, you know, we need an outlet too because we're dealing with a lot of stuff. And sometimes, our children, when they have mental health challenges, I don't want to say it's because of them that we have them, but that's just a lot for moms to have to deal with. And all of a sudden, now I have anxiety. Now I'm depressed. Now I because
Exactly.
so it's just finding that person and for you can be hard, but I think it's super important. And I have to take my own advice.
Yeah, me too. Write it on the calendar. We
I
have to
know.
put it in the calendar. Um,
Maybe that's what we use a life coach for. We like hire them, we tell them everything we want. They go out and they vet and they
Mhm.
find us the life coach. Now, I will say as a white woman, right? It should be so easy for me to find a therapist.
right.
For people who are looking for culturally competent
Mm.
therapists, who are people of color, who are in the LGBTQ plus community, who are like first generation Americans. There's more to it where it's super, super important that you find those culturally competent therapists who understand where you're coming from in a way that, me as a white woman, I can certainly empathize, but I'm not going to have that lived experience to really know what it's like to get maybe the side eye when you walk into every single store you go into. So I think that it's really challenging, and we'll make sure that we put up in our comments some of the places that we found where you could find more culturally competent therapists who are like people of color, who are friends of the queer community, because I think that makes it more difficult, and I hope that teletherapy And being able to do therapy virtual makes things easier for people in rural communities, or if you
Yeah.
have one of those non-traditional jobs, like if you were in the medical field where you're working like 12-hour days, how
Yeah.
easy is it to like make that time to make those appointments? So I think that
Exactly.
people have some serious challenges in, and just finding the therapist that they really connect with, who gets them, who really kind of, gets them.
Yeah, I was actually speaking with a mom last night, one of my families, and she has a 15-year-old son, and we were actually kind of commiserating last night about how there's not a whole lot of therapists for young men, um, in that 13 to 17, 18-year range. It's usually, a lady, and, they're kind of feeling a little, weird, or like it's my mom, and, she was having a little bit of issue with that. Now, she's got a good group, and she's gonna, talk to them about it, which is good, but, that is definitely a need that I've been seeing for young guys to have someone to talk to.
I had a lot of success when I was looking for a therapist. I have a boy, and I called my insurance company, and they were like, "Oh, here's like a therapist that's like only like a 30-45 minute drive for you." And I was like, okay, so that is like down this huge mountain that sometimes they close in the winter because of the weather. So it's not, it would be like a half a day thing once a week to take them there. And my son needs to see a man. And maybe I lucked out that day talking to whoever it was who answered the phone from the insurance company, who said, okay, so there's some therapists in the area. They're not necessarily in our, in accepting our insurance. What we can do is we could do like a 90-day waiver. We could work with them. And eventually, so we had, that trial period, we liked them. And then eventually their practice worked with our insurance so that we were able to work with them. But, sometimes I think things change quickly, but try and give your insurance company a call and let them know what your specific needs are and why you're having a hard time finding a therapist. And maybe that will help a little bit.
Yeah.
I also know, like, Psychology Today has a platform that you can go to where you can check like your area, and if you are looking for a male, a female, maybe they have options for non-binary therapists, and you could kind of whittle down what you're looking for, and they'll give you a list of suggestions. And someone who I know has done that, has used that recently, and has found a great therapist that they're really connecting with. So I think that can be a start.
I do tell
Yeah.
I have one or two families I've worked with in the past month or so that, sometimes the expectation is in reference to like insurance and mental health is that, well, shouldn't my PCP, my doctor, just don't they know where I should go? But it really is our responsibility, to look on the back of that card, call member services and just say who is in network. And like you said, if there's not that male person that kiddo would respond better to, what are my options? If you don't offer that, what are my options? But it's something that we have to put on our plate. It stinks, but we have to kind of make that phone call. The doctor's offices, the nurses there, the secretaries there, they don't know your insurance, whoever's participating with that particular insurance. So yeah, you do have to, research a little bit, but that's what the member services is on the back of that card. Just call them and ask.
And if you are having a hard time finding a therapist who will treat your child, who takes your insurance, and if your child has a diagnosis, then let's talk for a minute about PH95. Some people know of it as the loophole. So, ladies, you want to talk? I'm going to put you on the spot. You want to tell me a little bit about PH95?
Absolutely, we
Go
talk about it all the time.
Oh,
No, so when in a family, and some families don't know this, and it's it's very interesting, but when a family has a child with a mental health diagnosis,
or
that
any
child,
disability diagnosis.
right, right, they are actually able to get Medicaid in our state. So, there's not, and they do call it the PH95 loophole because of the mental health disability portion. But, if your child has that, a lot of doors will open, more services will open. And sometimes there's a little bit of a stigma. I have families that say, oh, we have private insurance, we don't need that. Well, your child needs it. Your
Yeah.
child needs the services that, and they absolutely qualify with that diagnosis. So
Right. And
that's
your
25.
income is not a factor.
Right.
Make sure
Right.
you know that.
Yeah, because that's the first thing everybody says is I make too much money for medical
Okay.
assistance, and that is true. I mean, if you work a full-time job, you probably make too much money. The threshold for medical assistance is pretty low, but this has absolutely nothing to do with your income, your family's assets, anything like that. It is specifically PH95 is specifically medical assistance based on your child's disability. And
Right.
if you're not sure, because it's kind of like this catch-22, right? How do you get a diagnosis without seeing maybe a therapist? And in many cases, your family doctor can help.
Yes.
If your child has a physical disability, obviously, but you can use your family doctor, your pediatrician, your primary care physician to apply. But if you're worried about something like, I think my kiddo has ADHD, if you can go to your family doctor for that preliminary diagnosis and then apply, there's a lot of therapies that commercial insurance just won't pay for. There's a lot of treatment options like high fidelity wraparound services, if it's available in your area, that you're not going to be able to get with your commercial insurance. A lot of treatment for autism, because it's more intensive treatment, and commercial insurance won't pay for that. But you could very easily go to it's the Penny website, right?
Mhm.
I think
PNNY.
it's
IE.
Compass.
Compass,
Isn't it the
Oh,
Compass?
Compass.
Right?
Compass. Sorry. Penny is
Yeah.
for
Insurance, like health insurance for.
through the marketplace. So that's a different thing. Compass is the Pennsylvania Compass, is the website to go through. And in a memo box, you're going to write in PH95 so that it triggers them to ignore your income. And even if you're rejected at first, you're just going to follow up and say this is PH95, because sometimes that happens. Or they can call you all and you can help them apply. Same
Yes.
thing if you're filling out a paper application, you write on it PH95. And
Yes.
that can open some doors for you. For instance, school-based therapy is something that you may be able to get, but that's one of those things that you're going to need a medical assistance card for. And
Right. And
there's
when
no-
applying, make sure you have that documentation from the doctor. That is something that you do have to add to your application.
And you do still have to fill everything out the same way that you normally would. You do still have to include information about your income and all that stuff, but that should absolutely trigger that that application to go through. And you can still use your commercial insurance, so it's not medical assistance is usually the payer of last resort, but there shouldn't be any stigma. But I get it. But it does open doors. Ladies, any final? Oh, go ahead.
We've had a lot of families. I know I've helped families do them as well. So if anybody needs guidance on doing them, like Julia said, you do have to upload some things, so you have to have those documents. But if you need help filling that out, that's what we're here for. We can help you do that.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then-
most of us have had to fill that out.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts?
Get therapy.
Get yourself
Denise.
put it on your calendar. You know, we do it for our kiddos. You know, we need to do it for ourselves.
So let's put it on our calendar. We'll check back in a month and we'll see if we followed our own advice.
There we go.
Well, thanks for listening, everyone. If